Hey, welcome to Draft Academy. My name's Mike. In this tutorial, I want to talk to you guys about catching errors in Python. Now, a lot of times when we're writing Python programs, you'll encounter different errors. So different situations could come up and your program might throw an error or it might throw an exception. And a lot of times when these situations happen, they'll completely stop your program from running. And what we can actually do is we can watch out for, certain specific errors that are going to pop up in our program, and we can actually handle them. So instead of our program just breaking and stop executing, we can actually handle those errors and do things when they occur. So I want to show you guys an example of using this. Down here I'm saying number is equal to int input enter a number. Basically what's happening is I'm prompting the user to enter in a number using this input command, and then I'm converting whatever they entered into an integer. So as long as they enter in like a valid integer, I can convert it into an integer. So I can convert it into like a whole number, and I can store it inside of this number variable. Then I'm just printing it out. So let's try to execute this program. I'm gonna run the program, and you'll see down here it says enter a number. So we can enter in like 4, for example. And when I enter in 4, everything's gonna work, and it's just gonna print out 4, and everything is right in the world. And actually, I'm going to modify this up here so it's a little easier to see. But let's say we run the program again. So it says, okay, enter your number. Let's say that I break the rules and I don't enter a number. So I just ignore what the prompt says and I put, some random text in here. Now when I enter this, the program's going to throw an error. You can see down here it says value error, invalid literal for int base with base 10. Basically, hey, you didn't enter in an integer like you said you would, right? We told them to enter in a number, they entered in text, so it broke the program. And this is a situation that happens a lot. So there's a lot of different situations where something can just go wrong in our program. And up until now, we've just kind of accepted it as a reality. But if you're writing a real live Python program, you don't want something like this to trip up your program. You don't want the entire program to break when somebody just forgets to enter in a number, right? You want to be able to handle all these different situations. And in order to handle them, we can use something called a try except block. And a try except block will basically allow your program to try out a piece of code. And if everything goes well, then we're great. Like we could try out entering in the number. And if the user enters in the correct number, great. But if they don't enter in the correct number, then we can basically account for that. So if they entered in something like a string when they're supposed to enter in a number, we could tell them hey, you entered in the wrong thing. So I'm gonna show you guys how we can use these try except blocks. I'm gonna come up here and I'm just gonna say try. I'm gonna make a colon, and now I want to indent both of these things. So both of these things are gonna be inside of this try block. Now I'm gonna make a new line. I'm gonna come down here and I'm just gonna type out except, and I'm also gonna put a colon here, and down here I'm just gonna print something out. So I'll just say invalid input. So now, since I put this code inside of this try block, if the user enters in something wrong, it's gonna be able to catch it. So it'll be able to catch what the user does wrong and print out invalid input onto the screen. So let's go ahead and run our program, and it's just gonna say enter a number. So we're gonna ignore that, we'll enter this in. And now instead of yelling at us and breaking the program, it just says, hey, invalid input. So it was able to handle the error that got called. It was able to handle the invalid input error, basically just told us, hey, no more input. So this is a really powerful thing that we can do in our Python programs, basically just to protect our programs, right? If I want to have my program running for long periods of time, I can't have something as simple as an invalid input trip it up. So I can catch that invalid input using these try except blocks. But here's the thing, you'll notice that this little guy down here is getting highlighted. And let's just see what it has to say. So it's basically saying too broad exception clause. And this is a message that we're getting because when I just say except, this will catch any error under the sun. So anything that can go wrong in my program, for the most part, this is gonna accept it. So let me give you guys an example. Let's say I had in my program, I was creating a variable, right? So I wanted to create a variable called value, and I set it equal to 10 divided by 0. Now, if you know anything about math, you'll know that you can't divide a number by 0. It's not possible. So the program isn't going to be able to handle this, and you'll see that this is going to throw an error for us. So when I run the program, it basically says 0 division error, division by 0. We're not allowed to do that, right? if I took this and I put this down inside of this try block and I just pasted it in here, it's gonna get caught by this exception that we wrote down here. So it's gonna get caught by that except. So when I run the program, you'll see it says invalid input. But the problem is that we didn't input something that was invalid, right? We just divided by 0, but it wasn't able to handle that, right? So it could not divide by 0, it threw an error. So even though we didn't get an invalid input, even though it was because we divided by 0, it still printed this out. And this brings me up to another point, is we can actually catch, or we can accept specific types of errors. So for example, in this case, we got a division by 0 error. In this case, we got an invalid input error, right? We put something in that was wrong. It couldn't convert the value. So I can create 2 different accept blocks to catch 2 different types of errors. So down here, I can just make a space and I can specify the type of error that I want to catch. So when we divided by 0, it was 0 division error. So if I just put 0 division error in here, now it's gonna catch that 0 division error. So I can say divided by 0. I could also make another except, so I could say except, and we can catch the other exception that we got. So I think it was a value error, right? It was, we put in the wrong type of value inside of that input. So now we can print out invalid input. So with these 2 accept blocks, we're basically able to handle both of these situations. So for example, if this ends up breaking the program, this division by 0, then it'll be able to catch that. So down here, it'll tell us, hey, you divided by 0. But if I was to get rid of this line of code and I just entered in the number wrong, so I came down here and I entered in a string instead of a number, now it's gonna tell us invalid input. So we're gonna be able to specify what happens when certain things break. So when we get a value error, we can say invalid input. When we get a 0 division error, we can say divided by 0. So depending on what breaks, depending on what happens, we can actually do different things. And I want to show you guys one more thing we can do, which is we can actually store this error as a variable. So I can say except, and I can say as, and I can type in a name here. So a lot of times people will just say like ERR. And down here, I can print out the actual error. So I could just print ERR. And so if we end up dividing by 0, so if I say answer is equal to 10 divided by 0, we're gonna throw this error and it's gonna print out what went wrong. So now I can run this program and it just says division by 0. So it just printed out the error that we got. So that's another useful thing you can do, is you can actually like print out the specific error that got thrown. Now, a best practice in Python is to use these specific errors. So you always want to accept for a specific error. What you don't want to do is just say accept and then just accept anything under the sun. It's just too broad and it's not a good practice in Python. So you always want to be catching specific errors like this. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to Draft Academy to be the first to know when we release new content. Also, we're always looking to improve, so if you have any constructive criticism or questions or anything, leave a comment below. Finally, if you're enjoying Draft Academy and you want to help us grow, head over to draftacademy.com/contribute and invest in our future.